So who is replacing Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor? We got 11 top contenders to replace him as the National Security Advisor. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is out, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio replacing him on an interim basis. President Trump announced Thursday that Waltz, a former House GOP lawmaker, would instead be his next nominee for U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. So people are saying that he's not being fired, he's being promoted. He is now the ambassador to the United Nations, which I think most people can kind of read this as a firing because of the whole Signalgate issue. And it was kind of between, I feel like, Hegseth or Waltz. And the media, everybody wanted Hegseth, all of the neocons, the rhinos, the Democrats, the libs online, they wanted Hegseth to go. But when it really came down to it, this was Mike Waltz's fault. So he had to go. But they couldn't just say they were firing him, so they put him in a different role. And they're trying to say that this is simply a reassignment, when really I think what it is a firing. But, quote, from his time in uniform on the battlefield in Congress and as my national security advisor, Mike Waltz has worked hard to put our nation's interests first. I know he will do the same in his new role. Trump said that on True Social. Alex Wong, Waltz's deputy, is also expected to depart. Now, Alex Wong, he's a pretty shady character. From what I have read, Alex Wong is actually the one that added the individual onto the group chat that ended up being the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic. So Alex Wong, I believe, is the one actually at fault. Of course, that's his Walz's deputy. So I don't know what's going to happen with Alex there. But both have been targeted by far-right influencers in the MAGA movement, and Walz was at the center of the Signal scandal that embarrassed the Trump administration in March. Here are the leading candidates to replace Walz in a permanent capacity. So while I'm reading this, comment down below who your favorite is. I'm not really sure who my favorite is. I think I have an idea. I will say at the end of the list who my personal favorite would be, just based off of what I've seen so far. But starting off, number one, we got Marco Rubio. Definitely not my favorite. Marco Rubio's never been my favorite of anything, really. But the U.S.'s top diplomat could see his interim dual role extended to a permanently expanded portfolio. Rubio will be the first to serve as both the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor concurrently since the late Henry Kissinger. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce, who learned of Rubio's new role during her press briefing Thursday, said he has, quote, worn several hats during Trump's second term and expressed confidence that he can carry the additional load. Rubio has been involved in the administration's push to forge a peace agreement that would end the Russia-Ukraine war, and he has been a central figure in attempts to deport foreign students involved in anti-Israel protests. So you look at this last part. This is why I'm not a big fan of Rubio, and I'm not a big fan of this whole idea in general. This whole anti-Semitism thing. I don't know why the Trump administration is focusing on it. I don't agree with it. I think free speech should be free speech. And being a central figure in attempts to deport foreign students involved in anti-Israel protests, to me, I think that's kind of ridiculous, okay? This is not the only reason why I don't like Rubio. I believe Rubio's a neocon, and that's what I will always view him as, although he does seem like he has done some things in the most recent past that might show that he has, changed his ways a little bit. But when you're dealing with politicians, you're dealing with Machiavellian personalities. So is he really doing it because he changed, or is he doing it because he's got to go along to get along? He's got to play the game. I believe Marco Rubio is the type that plays the game. He doesn't actually believe in America first. But I could be wrong. Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff is a leading candidate to replace Waltz, according to multiple outlets, having quickly accumulated a sprawling portfolio as Trump's favored international negotiator. The Hill has reached out to Witkoff's spokesperson for comment. Witkoff, a billionaire real estate investor, was tapped by Trump to be his special envoy in the Middle East. He has since become the point person for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin over the war in Ukraine, and has been the lead negotiator in early talks with Iran over its nuclear program. So this is good right here. The talks with Iran, I'm a big fan of this. As some of you might know, Israel is trying to push the United States into attacking Iran, or at the very least, assisting them with attacks or backing them up with attacks on Iran, because they want to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear program, or so that's what they say. And Steve Witkoff has been kind of a hero in preventing this happening, because listen, if we start attacking Iran, or if we help Israel in attacks in Iran, what's that going to do? It's going to bring us into a war with Iran, something that I don't think anybody wants other than maybe Israel and some neocons in the United States. So I'm a big fan of Witkoff's work with Iran so far. Witkoff's relationship with Trump goes back decades. However, he would be a highly unusual pick as national security advisor with no official experience in government, foreign affairs, or the military. See, I like this pick right here, because I think that is a great qualification. No official experience in government, foreign affairs, or the military, and the Hill is calling this a highly unusual pick. Of course, anytime you get slammed by the media, it is a mark in your honor. Okay, let's look at this one. Rick Grinnell. Rick Grinnell is serving as Trump's envoy for special missions and was seen as a candidate for both National Security Advisor and Secretary of State heading into Trump's second term. He is also interim executive director of the Kennedy Center. Grinnell has kept a relatively low profile in recent months, but he was involved in the release of 6 Americans held hostage in Venezuela in January. Grinnell served in multiple posts during Trump's first 4 years in the White House, including acting director of national intelligence and ambassador to Germany. Trump also tapped Grinnell to be a special envoy for Serbia and Kosovo during his first Oval Office stint. I'm okay. I like Grinnell. Okay, I like Grinnell. He's cool. He's cool. I don't really know too much about him, but what I've seen so far, I guess I'm okay with him. If you know more about him, let me know what you think. Stephen Miller, big fan of Stephen Miller. Axios reported Friday that Stephen Miller's Trump's top domestic policy advisor is gathering buzz in Washington amid the search for Waltz replacement. Miller has been a leading force in Trump's immigration crackdown as the president's Homeland Security advisor and is often a public face of the administration's most divisive deportation actions. A move to the national security brief would mark a significant shift of Miller's attention within Trump's inner circle. Miller was part of a signal group that accidentally included journalist Jeffrey Goldberg, and I am of the camp that I don't believe that this was an accident. I think this was on purpose. But it just, because what are the odds that this journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, and if you don't know who Jeffrey Goldberg is, he is like the most anti-Trump journalist that exists in the entire world. This guy, the number one guy you wouldn't want on a Trump administration group chat, he pops up in a Trump administration group chat. That cannot be a mistake. I refuse to believe it. But in that discussion, he effectively shut down debate among top officials over Trump's plans to attack Houthi rebels threatening Red Sea shipping lanes. Then we have Michael Anton. Michael Anton has quickly become a favorite candidate to replace Waltz in online MAGA circles, as Politico reported. He was also appointed last week to lead technical talks with Iran over its nuclear program. He is the State Department's policy planning director and was in the Vatican last weekend when Trump met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. During Trump's first White House term, Anton served the National Security Council. He later worked as a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute. Okay, very interesting. I've seen some buzz about Michael Anton. If I were to guess, I believe that Michael Anton is going to be taking over the role. That would be my number one guess. I don't know too much about Michael Anton. I've heard kind of two sides of the guy. One thing that is a red flag that sticks out to me is I believe he used to work for BlackRock. Yes. Does that mean you're a terrible person? No. But anytime I see the word or the company BlackRock attached to someone's name, it just I don't know. It raises some questions in the mind. Okay. Sebastian Gorka. I think I'm a little bit neutral on Sebastian. Okay. Sebastian Gorka, who's a first Trump administration alumnus, could also be in the mix. He was tapped in November of last year to be the deputy assistant to the president and the senior director for counterterrorism. Let me just say for the record, I don't think he's going to be picked, but I could be wrong. Quote, since 2015, Dr. Gorka has been a tireless advocate for the America First agenda and the MAGA movement, serving previously as a strategist to the president in the first Trump administration. Trump picked Gorka to be on his National Security Advisory Board in July of 2020. Before that role, he was advising the administration on counterterrorism matters, okay? Then we have Robert O'Brien. I have no idea who this guy is. Robert O'Brien was Trump's fourth and final national security advisor during his first term. Serving from 2019 to 2021, he was seen as a contender for Secretary of State before Rubio's nomination. O'Brien was Trump's special envoy for hostage negotiations before becoming national security advisor. He previously advised high-profile Republicans, including former Senator Mitt Romney and Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Yes, Ted Cruz. I used to work for Ted Cruz, believe it or not. I am not a fan of Ted Cruz anymore, really. But I used to work for him, okay, when I was in college. He was also a relatively rare figure in the first Trump administration, acknowledging Joe Biden's victory in 2020 election and promising an orderly transition. So, looks like he acknowledged Joe Biden's victory, so he must have been one of the ones that stabbed Trump in the back and didn't agree with Trump that the election was stolen. So, you know, that's kind of a red flag, okay? A little bit of a red flag. Fred Fleets. Fred Fleets was chief of staff and executive secretary of the National Security Council for a few months during the first Trump administration. From May to October in 2018, he was a longtime top aide to John Bolton. Okay. If you are attached or connected in any way to John Bolton, I'm going to say no. Don't run away from this guy. You don't want to have anything to do with John Bolton and his weird walrus mustache, okay? He is currently vice chair of the America First Policy Institute for American Security and a Newsmax contributor. Fleet spent nearly 3 decades in various national security positions, including in the CIA, the State Department, and as a House Intelligence Committee staff member. He was on Trump's short list of candidates to replace Bolton in 2019, a list that also included O'Brien, Lisa Gordon Haggerty, and Keith Kellogg and Ricky Waddle. Then we come to Keith Kellogg. Retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg was initially appointed as Trump's special envoy to the Russia-Ukraine talks in January, but he saw that role scaled back to focus on the Ukraine side of talks, which includes coordination with Europe. Witkoff has handled the Russia side of the brief. Kellogg served as national security advisor to then Vice President Mike Pence in the first Trump administration and as chief of staff for the National Security Council. Kellogg is a decorated veteran of both the wars in Vietnam and the Persian Gulf, and he was a senior Pentagon official during the September 11th terrorist attacks. The retired general briefly served as acting national security advisor following the resignation of Michael Flynn, also retired lieutenant general. You know, Michael Flynn here, this is who Trump really needs to put in the position, in my opinion. Trump, just forget all these other names. Let's just go with Michael Flynn, okay? Mike Flynn, the real GOAT. But let's continue on here. Christopher Landau, another option to succeed Walz is Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau. The State Department declined to comment on the possibility. Landau, an attorney, was Trump's ambassador to Mexico from 2019 to 2021. Before his time in Mexico City, Landau practiced law in D.C. for more than 3 decades, okay? Elise Stefanik, now, I don't see how this is even an option because I believe she was going to be the ambassador to, was it the UK? And she had to step down, or Trump requested that she step down. And, because, I mean, the House of Representatives the Republican majority is pretty slim, and she would have had to step away from her seat So I don't see this as actually being a possibility, but I could be wrong. They say here, Stefanik would be a top contender if it weren't for the House Republican math problem. So I'm going to skip this one because that is, I don't believe, is an option. But I said I was going to tell you my favorite pick out of all of these. Let's go up here to my favorite one, which is Steve Witkoff. Okay, I like Steve Witkoff. Out of all of these, I would pick Steve Witkoff. I think what he's doing with negotiations with Iran is fantastic. I think he is doing everything he can to make sure we aren't getting into a war with Iran. And he is going against what really Israel wants, I believe. Israel doesn't want these peace talks. Israel just, they want to go in there. They want to bomb Iran. They want to bomb these nuclear sites, which would inevitably lead to some sort of major conflict and escalation between the United States, Iran, and Israel. And I think what Witkoff is doing right now is fantastic. So out of all these, my favorite would probably be Steve Witkoff. But what do you guys think? Who is your favorite out of all these on the list? Let me know down below in the comments what you think. Like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. But until then, I will see you on the next one.